All right, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can get you.
Okay, thank you for that. So we start. I just wanted to find out if people have any specific questions with regards to what we looked at yesterday. Like posterity will judge us as human beings that lived somewhere in the year 2020 used to have lectures on software engineering and project management, right? What were they thinking? They had nothing better to do. But anyway, I just wanted to find out, just shared my screen here. I would like to find out if people have concerns, questions. I'm especially keen, right? I'm very keen to find out if either one of you, if anybody has bothered to actually install Git and already start testing out the different things we introduced yesterday. More importantly, I wanted to find out if people have gotten to a stage where they have registered for a GitHub account using their UNZA assigned email addresses. So a couple of things I'm interested in hearing from you. If you have any questions with regards to what we did yesterday and your experiences, if at all you managed to install Git, have you managed to install Git? Is it a free function installation or anyone?
Hello, Doc. Yes, I managed to install a Git, but from there it was giving me some
Git. No, Git. Git is a small person.
Git.
No, you said Git. Git. Git is something else. Git. Well, I guess it doesn't matter, right? Pronunciation, but it's like I don't know. Okay, yeah. So you were saying you managed to install Git, yeah? Yes. Hello. Hello. Is that somebody wanted to say something here? I don't think they're finished. Okay, you don't want to say anything, then I'll continue. There's a difference between a JIT and a GIT. Anyways, so our dictionary has a pretty interesting, a JIT, not a GIT. A JIT is a person who is shorter or younger than you, right? So a young person or something, JIT. GIT, on the other hand, is a version control software too, right? Software, yeah? Freely available and open source, by the way. All right, that's nice. Okay, so if there are no questions, then we continue then. So I got to a stage where there's a reason why you need to do these things. Because at this stage, you should have already started working on your initial prototypes, right? Now, if you started working on your initial prototypes, what we are recommending or what we expect you to do, and in fact, we expect you to do this because you will share the source code. What you are going to share, the source code you're going to share is going to be shared using Git, not Git. We will require that you share a link that's going, please follow me, by the way, on Git. Light on Theory, one word, on GitHub, sorry, not on Git. So what we will expect you to do is you will go to your repository, right? Like I'm going to this repository here, right? And then you will share this repository with whoever, well, like in this case, it will be Lighton, I guess. It has to be a feature for sharing. Let me see. I haven't used this thing in a while here. There has to be a way of sharing. Manage access, I guess, I don't know. There has to be an easier way of, come on, really? Sorry about that. There has to be an easier way of, oh, there we go. So you invite Lighton as a collaborator, right? So you go to settings and then you say manage access and then you say invite collaborator and then you add Lighton as a collaborator, right? So you'd add me here. I don't think I can add myself because I'm already there, right? I wouldn't, I'm already there, but you add me as a collaborator so that I have access to the repository. Now, you only be able to do this if you're able to install Git and be able to push changes to your GitHub accounts, right? Because we expect you to share a URL to add Lighton as a collaborator on GitHub, right? And what we expect to see, by the way, once you share whatever product implementation you shall have, is once we start going through the commit messages, right, we will expect to see the list of names of all of the project team members, right? Like if you look at this repository, for instance, only Lighton is a project team member, but I do believe if I was to go to, I guess, the ETD portal, I'm not quite sure if I was to go to the ETD portal, I guess I should be able to, let me see here, I should be able to see other people. It was imported from elsewhere, so ETD portal. I should be able to see a historical record of other contributors or something. I don't know, I hope so. This is an old repository, but anyway. Okay, it looks like it's, oh, there we go, right? So this is what we expect to see, right? So you notice that there are a number of people that contributed here. There's Lighton here, and then there's Hussein, right? There's a user called NETD. There's supposed to be a couple of other users here, the people that were instrumental in implementing this thing here, right? I mean, my contribution towards this was just minor. There we go. These are the people, Lawrence, NETD. I wonder if, okay, it's not here. So we expect you guys to showcase these things here, right? This other person is not here, it appears. Anyways, so we expect to see these things here. So that when we go to your repository, we'll be able to see the different contributors, right? The people that actively participated. And what we expect to see is all of your project team members. There has to be a way of easily seeing, I guess, a summary of people that contributed to this repository. There has to be a way. Project actions. Oh, wow. It appears I've forgotten how to do this. It's usually a way. By the way, it's a nice tool because it automatically visualizes the different types of languages associated with a piece of software that has been developed, right? So let's see here. There has to be a way. Maybe I can also go to this space, I guess. It would be nice if I go here. It's a nice way of showcasing how you get to look at the different contributors, right? So if this is a different project here, yeah, I was expecting to see this, right? So we expect to see this, a group of 4 or 5 of you appearing here as contributors, right? By the way, this space is an open source software tool that you can go look at and explore as you are experimenting with Git, not JIT, Git. You can look it up and plenty of other open source software projects. This is how you learn how to do things, right? Anyway, so we looked at Git and GitHub, and I recommended that you do certain things. And then we ended at a stage where I was showcasing exactly how you go about or giving you pointers on, people don't want to listen there, giving you pointers on how you go about installing Git. So just go to git.com and then you should be able to download Git. If you want, you can also download front-end UIs, right? Graphical user interface clients, if you don't want to work on the command line like Lighton was showcasing, but you're much more productive on the command line anyways. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to recommend any graphical user interface client applications. I mostly work on the command line myself. Right. I also, as we were talking about installation, I also emphasize the fact that you, if you don't have a computer, but you have access to a smartphone, I recommended that you can install Temax, and then within Temax you get to install Git, right? You get to install Git. So here's to hoping this was very clear, but it appears it's difficult to gauge whether or not it was clear because only one person in attendance has managed to do this, right? I know if Hawkins, Jackson, Waze, and nephews are in the house, and they're probably an exception to the rule because I know they've worked with Git before, GitHub, I guess, to a certain extent. Now, so I thought again, right? So we went through the registration process here. Before we start our discussion of so-called vision control software, I thought I would finish off the last part of the first section here, where I just showcase a sample, a workflow of how you get to use Git, right, when you're vision controlling software, right? So I'm going to do 2 things here. I'm going to showcase this by latching on to an existing repository, right? And then okay, I'll create a new repository and then we'll work with a pre-existing repository. And then I'll showcase exactly how you go about cloning things here or something. Maybe that would be a good enough starting point before we start our discussion of that thing here. So it turns out that that creating a repository in Git, and I know this is a bit unorthodox, this was supposed to probably have been discussed after our discussion of version control, but I thought, my thinking here is that showcasing what actually happens and then having a discussion about version control systems, and in fact, the focus of our conversation, our short conversation, is going to be on centralized VCS and or version control systems and distributed version control systems. So we'll look at the fundamental differences here. Right, so I'm just going to showcase exactly how we go about creating a new repository. Quite easy, really, right? Assuming you've configured Git for initial use, which typically means you specify. So I'm just going to change directory to I'll say work here, and then I'll just say work. Assuming you've already, assuming you've already, assuming you've already configured Git here, I'll just call this Git examples. Assuming you've already configured Git, and by configuring Git here, we go through a process of how to configure Git, I guess, towards the end, but maybe we can do it right now. So you configure your, I don't know if you remember yesterday, but when I was trying to commit a change, right? After adding that file using the touch command, when I was trying to commit a change, it was complaining that I had not yet configured my user, my ID, right? User email address or something. And the editor that I would want to associate Git with, right? So it turns out that all you do is, I don't know if there's a way of, so I've already configured this, but the thing is, anyway, you configure your email, you configure your name as well, right? And the reason you're configuring your name and your email is you want to have this sort of situation here, right? Where every time you commit a change, you have this sort of information that appears, right? Identifying information. This is important because it's important because if you have 4 people, if you have more than one person who's contributing to this repository, think about this for a second. Or in fact, if you have hundreds, if not thousands of people contributing to a project, right? What you want is you want to be able to identify which person was responsible for each of the different changes in the repository. So if you look at this historical record of the changes in this particular repository that I'm using as an example, what you will notice is that we are saying we want to be able to figure out who did what and when, right? So each one of these commit messages here, these I think these are SHA-1 hashes or something. Each one of these signals a change to the repository. It also associates who effected that change and when that change was made, right? I guess more importantly though, there's usually, and this is optional, there's usually a description of what sort of change was made to the repository, right? So that the other people working on the repository have a firm sense of what exactly was done insofar as changes are concerned, right? So typically when you're pushing something to a centralized or a distributed version control system, there are instances where you might, if there's a change that happened before you got the most up-to-date copy of the repository, what you need to do before you commit your changes, you need to pull the changes, right? So you pull the changes. When you pull the changes, before you actually add your new commit message or your new changes, you want to check what was done, right? And by whom, you understand? And then you add, and sometimes maybe this might not be that important, especially if let's say you are working on a project where you have, you've segmented or fragmented your system in such a way that you have the user interface, you have the backend or something, right? User interface. The backend, or I guess the database or something, and then you have server side. This is the UI. You have client side scripts or something. and I'm trying to latch on to what the server-side scripts, what you've been taught in 3010 here, right? So that it makes more sense. So assuming you fragment your project in such a way that you've decided to say, you know what, Lewis is going to work on the user interface, and maybe I guess, I don't know, Hawkins is going to work on the client side, and Nephew, for instance, is perhaps going to work on, I don't know who else is part of this project, but Nephew, who else is part of this project? Nephew, I don't know. Nephew is going to work on the server-side script. Now, if you're using a distributed version control system to keep track of what changes are happening, when Lewis makes a change and he pushes those changes to the single source of truth, the person who's working on the client side, right? He or she doesn't really have to worry so much about, oh, what change was made? Why? Because he's working, you could easily argue here that he's working on an isolated component of the system, right? In as much as this might be related to the user interface, but in all likelihood, it can be viewed or perceived as an independent component of the system, right? Effectively, you've sort of like clustered or fragmented your project in such a way that you can independently work on the various components. And then at a later stage, you probably combine things together, right? So that's one way of looking at this, right? No need for you to worry to say, when you're putting the changes, you check what change was made, unless if you're curious to see how many changes were made before you did the last pull, for instance. Then you'd worry about, or you'd be concerned about the commit message. What you will discover as well, very, very soon, is that with tools such as Git, you can take advantage of so-called branches, right? And so with branching, and we talk about these things, branching, merging, and pulling and pushing, but I just thought I'll talk about this thing as we're talking about fragmenting the project, in case you want to fragment your projects, right? So one other approach would be, you can use the same branch, right? You use the same master branch where you're keeping track of all the changes. This is what I do myself, because most of the time I work alone, right? So when I'm working alone, I don't worry so much about different branches, unless if I'm doing something that requires me to experiment with something that's contrary to the main thing that I'm working on, then I'll create a new branch. So for instance, if I'm developing software and I'm currently working on version 1, but I've marked the end of version 1 and I want to start working on version 2. What I can do is I can create a branch for version 1 and then start associating version 2 with the master branch. Once I finish version 2, I do the same thing. I create a separate branch for version 2. And you can see this if you download tools such as, if I can get back to, the ETG port, I think I have it here. I don't know. If I was to, I'm going to copy this. If we were to, just want to showcase, and I don't know if a number of things are happening here, but if I wanted to, let's say, I hope that we have versions here. I want to showcase different versions, right? And we'll talk about this, by the way. What I'm doing is I'm just cloning a repository from GitHub, right? This is what you will do, by the way, once you start working on this. So I just want to showcase exactly how you would create these branches. Sometimes you can use labels, right, to keep track of the significant changes or milestones associated with the project. So I'm just going to go in here and just say Git branch. Oh, bad example. There's no. Anyway, there are no. This is quite sad. Maybe I should have said Git clone or something. Okay. Anyway, it appears this thing doesn't want to. That's wild. Let me see here. Git clone all branches. There has to be. I'm sure I'm missing some flag or something, which is what I'm trying to do here, right? Yeah, it doesn't look like that thing has I thought it had versions before. Anyway, that's fine. Nobody cares. But so this is how you go about doing it. You create a new branch and whatnot. But anyway, back to what I was talking about, right? What was I talking about? I don't know. Okay. Right, so we're talking about a whole bunch of things here, but I wanted to showcase exactly how you take advantage of keeping track of the different subcomponents of the system that you're working on. So maybe you'd call this would be a branch called UI branch or something. You come up with a fancy name. This would be like a client-side branch or something, and then this would be like a server-side branch, right? So you name your branch, and then after you name your branch, at some stage, once you've completed the different components of the system, you merge them together, right? So you glue them up together, and then you're done with your system. All right, so here's the thing, right? The way that you go about creating a new repository, obviously, is you identify, you first of all identify a location on your computer where which you're going to use as a staging area, as a folder where you'll be putting these changes. So if you're developing software, you identify a folder where this software is going to be housed, right? This is what you were told in 2011, right? You create a new folder, and then that folder will be like a project folder or something. So you create a project folder, right? So I'll call this sample git repo or something, and then so this would be my sample git folder that I'm using to keep track of the changes. And really, when you're using your file manager, what you'll notice is that it's like any other normal folder, right? So this is what I've just created here. Now, the very first thing you do is you have to, I'm just showcasing my thing here. You initialize the repository, right? To tell Git to say you want to start keeping track of the changes that are happening here. We'll revisit this once we're done with our discussion of version control, by the way. I'm just showcasing my workflow here, my workflow, sample workflow of how you use Git and GitHub. This is what we're doing here, in case you've lost track of what's happening. So you tell Git to say you want to keep track of this. And what you'll notice is when you do a list, right? Or when you go to your file explorer and you try and check here to see if there's anything, what you'll notice is that there's nothing in here. It turns out there is something in here. It's a hidden file, a .git file, right? So if I do a list here with to show all, you notice that there's a .git file. It's a hidden file. In that hidden file, it's where most of the changes are going to be happening. So you notice here that I have about 112 kilobytes of data, right? It's meant to keep track of configuration details of the repository itself, whatever changes you have. If you've explicitly configured files to exclude, for instance, like large binary files, you don't add them to your repository, right? So if you have these huge files, you just tell Git to say exclude these files. And we'll probably talk about those things as well. So you initialize the repository, and then once you initialize your repository, then you start doing your work, right? So part of what you initially start doing is traditionally, right? This is like your hello world type of arrangement here. But what you first of all start doing is you create what's called a README file, right? And you'll find these README files become useful when you're using these cloud-based services like Git and Bitbucket. Because it turns out that the README file is the thing that's going to render this information you're seeing below here. ETD portal, downloads, and whatnot. So if I go to the DSpace repository, for instance, this part you're seeing here from here, you notice here it says README here. It's a README file. And it's created using a markup language called Markdown, right? It's similar to HTML, which you've been introduced to in 2010. The syntax is somewhat different, but all markup languages are the same, right? You have a combination of structure and content, right? Effectively use structural elements to determine exactly how the content is going to be rendered, right? This is what you were taught in 2010. So it's a simple thing here. I mean, I guess I'll leave this as an exercise for you to look up Markdown. If you want, we can have a crash course of Markdown later down the line, right? So I'll call this a sample ICT 3020 Git repository or something. By the way, what I have here is the title, right? It's similar to your, not the title really, but it's similar to your H1, your header. In HTML, we have H1, H2, H3, H4, right? It's just similar to H1. So I'll just say sample Git repository, and I have text here just to say this is just a sample ICT 3020 Git repository, right? And you will see that once I render this, the plugins you can use for what you call this, for Chrome, for instance, to see how this is going to look like, right? But you can do fancy things like embed links, just like, or images, just like you would in HTML really, right? If you're curious, you might want to look up, let me see if I have that thing configured here. So if I open my browser here and try and read me file, boom, there we go. So I have the plugin that, and I think the plugin I use is called Markdown Preview Plus. I do encourage you to download Markdown Preview Plus. It will save you the trouble of trying to confirm if what you've written, the Markdown you've written. Granted, I mean, it's going to be one file which will have Markdown, right? But if you want, I do encourage you to look it up. Markdown Plus is called Markdown Plus Chrome. Markdown Preview Plus. Right? It's a Chrome it's a Chrome plugin. If you remember, we had the discussion of plugins a very, very long time ago, 3 years ago, right? It's quite popular, right? 90,000 users. I'm one of the 90,000, and I'm very proud of that. But so I do encourage you to do that. I've just shared the link in there. Right. So once you create this README file and you push your changes to GitHub, you'll be able to render this for you. But the thing here is more about workflows, right? You create a new file. You notice that I have one file here. If I do a git status, right, it shows you the status of your repository. What you will, by the way, again, we will revisit these commands towards the end. I'm just showcasing my workflow here. It will spit out information that will tell you the status of the different files that you have in the repository. So in this case, I only have one file, right? Forget the .git folder here, which has the host low files there. By one file here, I'm referring to the files that I have explicit control over, the ones that I'm creating and modifying. This is one of the files I've created. You notice that my application color codes files, right? So it's in red here telling me that I have not, it's an untracked file here. Technically speaking, it's not a part of the repository, right? So what I would do here is I'll tell Git to say, you know what, Master Git, could you please add all the files in this repository? And then I check the status. You notice that its color code has changed to green here, right? It was previously untracked. It wasn't being tracked. Now that I've added it to the repository, it's being tracked quite all right, but it hasn't yet been committed. So meaning that if I was to push these changes to a single source of truth, the people I'm working with will not be able to see this change. It's only reflected as a change within my local repository, right? So the next step I'll do is I'll commit this change, right? And then once you notice that I just did a git commit here, right? Once I do a git commit, it tells me which files I'm going to commit to the repository, right? This is all commented out, by the way. Anything after the pound sign or the hash sign are comments, right? So another comment, I'll just add a descriptive piece of information. So in this case, I'll just say initial commit, right? And then I can add additional information after the initial commit title here and just say read minor changes to readme.md file. Right now, there's a couple of interesting things here that probably nothing to do with what we're going to be talking about, but I guess it's important for me to talk about this. What you notice is that I have a convention I use myself. If you look at the repositories that I've been working on, right? This is one repository. You notice that I have a piece of text on the top and then a space, and then I have slightly more text here. It turns out that there are tools that are available out there that you can use to automatically generate email messages, for instance, for these commit messages. And if you structure your commit messages in such a way that they are organized the way I organize them, I'm very proud of this. This can be used as a subject, and then this can be used as a body of your email message. I do this in all the different projects that I work on. So if I showcase a project I'm working on, or I was working on, I guess this year, for instance, 2020, you notice that same process, right? Short piece of text, which is just a description of what I've done, and then more details here, right? And some of these things you can look up on your own, but conventions on how long this is supposed to be, there's a certain number of characters that is supposed to be associated to this piece of text here, right? You want to make sure it wraps onto the next line, for instance. You want it to be a contiguous strip of text, right, all the way until the end here. You wrap it, right? Like, there we go, like I do here. Can't remember the, I think it's, I don't know if it's 50 characters, I believe. It should be 50 characters. I go with 50 characters. There's a reason why. All right, so I'll add this message and then I save this, right? You notice that once I save, once I commit the change, it will tell me important information like the branch that I'm associating that change to, right? The commit message, of course. A short form of the hash, right? So the unique ID associated with the change I've just made, right? And then obviously to tell me the number of changes I've made, right? So one file has changed here, and the specific type of changes I've added content to the file. You see the plus sign here. I've added contents to the file. Now again, if I do a git status here, you notice here that there's nothing to commit. If I do a git log, it will show me that there's an author called Lighton Piri, and this is their email address. And this person made a change on on October 16th, Friday, October 16th, at 17:32 on the 59th second, right? GMT plus 2 here. And the details of the change are this, commit message. This is a summary of the change he made. Right, so I've made that change, and really, if you create a new file, if you modify the file further, so if I go to the README file and I say I'm going to add, say some level 2 header example or something, and then I'll say this is an example of a level 2 heading, right? I'll save this. If I do a git status, it will show me that I've made a change, right? You see it's red, it's color coded. So again, I would say git add, or whatever change is there, right? I do a status, it will be in green, and then I'll say git commit. And then I'll give this a change. So I'll say minor change to readme.md. And I'll say added additional headings and text. And then I'll save this. If I do a git status, it will show me nothing changed. If I do a git log, it will show me that there are 2 commit changes that were made here. The first commit message, which is here, they're ordered in chronological order, right? From the most recent, which is at the top, and then the order commit message down at the bottom. So you notice that the change I just made right now is this, which was made at 17:37 on the second, right? Still on Friday here. So this is what you do, right? Same workflow. Now here's the thing, right? So the question then is how exactly, because Git and GitHub are completely different things, right? GitHub is nothing more than a cloud-based service that allows you to create single sources of truth, right? Effectively, it acts as a server that the different clients or different collaborators are going to use to push and pull changes from. Question is, how exactly do you go about creating a workflow where you incorporate Git, or you stitch together what you're doing with Git and GitHub? Well, it's easy, right? All you do is you go to GitHub. After you create your account, you log into GitHub. Now, Lighton has already logged on to GitHub here. I'm a bit wary here. I'm running out of battery power, but I think we're still almost done here. So I'll go to GitHub. Oh, someone followed me days ago. That's nice. I'll go to GitHub and then I'll say create new repository. Once I say create new repository, I'll call this repository, let's say, what can I call this? I'll just call it code. It's not code though, miscellaneous. And then I'll call this ICT 3020 Git examples, right? So, and then I get to choose whether I want to make this private or public so that people don't see what I'm doing here. I'll make it public because I'm assuming you guys might wish to maybe clone this repository and get to really look at what I've done here, right? And then there's a brief description that you add here, description associated with the repository. I'll just call this could be anything. I'll just call this random Git examples for the ICT program. The ICT 3020 course associated with the spellings here, right? Associated with the ICT program at the University of Zambia, something, right? So I have this description, and then so some other things that you might want to do as part of this workflow on GitHub itself is you can choose to add a new README file. We don't want to do this because Lighton, when creating this repository, has already created a README file. So I will not check this. I will not add a git ignore file because I want us to really get to do this towards the end. How you get to isolate certain types of files from your repository, right? And then maybe choose the license that tells others what this is all about. This is important. If you remember our discussion 11.10, and I think you did this in 10.20 as well, licenses, you want to be explicit so that people that are that will come across your repository will know what sort of license. Now, what I'm going to do here is I will just go with MIT is less restrictive, I guess. I've never used Creative Commons 0 here, but I'll just go with MIT. Wow, Creative Commons 0, I get. I don't know. Never used this. I didn't know there was the unlicensed. Anyway, so MIT license, and then I'll say create the repository, right? Now, so I've created the repository, and you notice that this repository, right? This is insane. I shouldn't have done that. This is change here. There's one commit message because I've created this crap. Okay, I'll overwrite this. It wasn't supposed to be there anyway. So once I create this repository, what I will do then now is I need a way of identifying exactly how I need to start pushing changes here. Well, it turns out, right? By the way, I can easily share this with you in case you want to refer to this at a later stage. I'm just going to post this here. Just pasted the link to the repository. So using this button called code here, right? It used to be clone, but it's code now. I just copy this the link to this repository, right? And I'll just paste it somewhere here so that I gain a sense of what it's all about here, right? So right. So it turns out that all I have to do is come to my repository and tell my repository that I want to add a new remote repository. And this new remote repository is identified by this URL here, or URI, right? The complete URI that I've gotten after going here. Yeah, code, and then I say copy. So I'll say I want to associate it with this URI. And if I do a git remote and then say show all, come on, really? If I say git remote and then minus, what the? Okay, git remote. But there was an oh, wow. Okay, that's fine. I'll just say git remote anyway. It will show me the, I wonder why it's not working. It will show me all the maybe it's verbose, right? V. Beautiful, it's V, not O. So if I do a git remote V, I'll be able to see details of the URI associated with pushing and pulling changes, right? So it's the same though, right? This is what I push and pull from the same link here. All right, so I add that remote repository, and now what I can do is I can tell Git to say, can you please push, I want to push everything in verbose mode, and I'll force this, right? And I'll show some progress here, and I want to do this. I'll tell Git, can you please push changes in my repository? Which changes are these? These changes here, right? These changes, these two changes here. Effectively, so what I want to do is when I push these changes to the other side, I want whoever is going to access this repository, people I'm collaborating with, to be able to see those changes, right? 11. I'm almost running out of battery power. I do apologize. So say git push, I guess, NSV progress, and then I'll say origin, right? So when I press enter, come on, I guess I'll need to do an upstream here and follow through with instructions. When I press enter, you'll be able to see what the. I guess I'll have to do an upstream before I force. I'm supposed to force this thing, right? Okay. just do as instructed here. I wanted to, it will prompt you for, how do we do this though? It will prompt you for your username here. Right? And then you should be able to, come on, the username is fading again. I hate this part, right? Please wait. Okay, beautiful. So, I mean, this is what you're supposed to see both when you're pushing new changes and I will run that command so that you see that it works, right? So I can force changes, right? And then it will be able to, it will ask me for my password, my credentials, and then I just enter my credentials like so. Right. The password is too complex, right? Sorry about that. Complex passwords, this is the problem you have there. There we go, beautiful. So once I push those changes here, if I refresh the GitHub repository, it will be able to show me the commit messages. And remember those 2 commit messages? I should be able to see them very, very soon. And I'm running out of battery power, drop with 7 minutes. It should be able to show me the different, this thing is acting up here. I don't know why this is not working anymore. I just refreshed. This is the thing about online demos. Okay, just refreshed.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I think I'm getting lost every time you are moving around the black pen. I can't relate to the thing that's going on.
Yeah, well, I can't hear what you're saying myself. You're
Okay,
breaking up.
I'm saying, every time like you try to demonstrate using the black terminal on your computer, I can't relate. I don't know. I'm getting lost. Is there maybe any other?
Yeah, well, so there's a reason why. You see, this is the reason why I told you yesterday to do something. I told you to, there's a pull request here. So I'll say compare pull request. I told you to install this and be able to replicate what I'm doing. This is the only way to make sense, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, so the only response I have for you is go and play back this recording and then try and see if you can, there's a pull request here. Try and see if you can replicate what I'm doing. Right? I'm just showcasing the workflow here. So the reason I'm moving around here is because I'm using Git and GitHub. And that's the best I can do in terms of showcasing what's happening here. Right? If you had installed Git and you had created a GitHub account, I'll ask you a question, Roy. Have you done that? Have you installed Git? Have you created a GitHub account?
Yes, we did.
Well, then what you should be doing is playing along, right? Playing along so that you're able to get to see what Lighton is doing. GitHub has somewhat changed here. It appears it's viewing this as a pull request, and you notice here that I have this pull request here. I'm trying to see if I can compare crossfork. Anyway, I'll do this later on. Are there any other random questions or something? Ooh, my battery is critical. I'm going to briefly pause for a little while. I'm logging on using my mobile device here. There's always a backup plan here. Just give me a second. Could you give me a second? I'm swapping devices. I'm swapping devices.
Okay.
Just give me a second. Thanks.
All right.
Yep, great. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We are able to get you.
Beautiful. Any questions? Lewis, you're about to ask. I do apologize for that. I'm just also going to, as Lewis is asking a question, I'm going to beam up the slides. But ask away, Lewis. You had a question?
Yes. It's a question. I would say it's a concern.
Okay.
And sir, is it possible that maybe towards the end of the slides, you can put most of the links that you are sharing, so that it's very easy for people just to click and easily download most of the applications that you're advising us to download? Because today I just realized that you've introduced us to a new is it application Markdown? Yes. So I don't know if it's possible you can put most of the links behind the slides.
Markdown is not Markdown is not an application. It's a markup language. It's like HTML. It's not an application. Right? It's simple though. Also, I mean, Markdown is probably one of you can learn it today. Actually, it's just it's similar to HTML. And in fact, what you can do, right? What Git does. Come on, sorry about the noise. The kids outside. What GitHub does, right? Is it you can embed HTML code within Markdown, right? I can share those links. I mean, Markdown is there's easy to follow tutorials online. It's probably one of the simplest things you're ever going to do in life. Learning how to use Markdown, right? It's quite simple, and especially if you've used HTML before. But yeah, sure, I can include those links. It's not important though. The only file that you're going to have that I expect to see in your repository that will have some Markdown is just your README file. And the reason is simple, right? So that when we're browsing through your code, on GitHub, we're able to see what is in the README file, right? So if you want to, I can share those links. It's always nice, by the way, some of these things that I throw away at you, there's a reason I'm doing this. Very, very soon, when you are looking for a job, is soon now, right? When you are looking for a job, these things will pop up. They will ask you, we are looking for someone who knows how to use Git. Now, of course, I mean, this is part of the syllabus, right? Configuration management, we're supposed to cover this. But they will ask you, do you know how to use Git? Do you? This is why we're doing this. So we can share the links with you, not a problem. That's not an issue. Any other concerns?
Sir, thank you. Thank you for that guidance. The other thing is over the commands on Git, the ones you are manipulating. So specifically, we're only supposed to look at the things you are doing now only. Yeah. The reason why I'm asking it's because at times you find that maybe we're trying to explore here and there. So exactly what you've done today is just what we need to look at in terms of the commands. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's something about what we just looked at today. And I just scrolled to slide number 16 here. I did mention that the reason why what I was showcasing today was just the workflow that you will do, that you will use as you are creating this this feasibility prototype, right, amongst yourselves. That's the workflow you're going to use. So individually, you'll be working from within so-called local repositories, local Git repositories. After you will push the changes from your local repository to GitHub, right? To GitHub. So I was just showcasing the workflow. If you go to slide number 16, you notice that with the last point here, sample Git to GitHub workflow. This was going to be done towards the end, but I thought, my thinking here is that what we're going to be talking about here tomorrow, by the way, at 16 hours, what we're going to be talking about once we discuss centralized version control systems. And in fact, once we introduce this concept of version control systems and what they do, and once we wrap up by looking at distributed version control systems, it will make more sense because you already have an idea as to how or why this is important. I've just showcased the workflow of why you're doing this, right? So there are more commands. The last point there where I was saying distributed version control in Git. We will revisit some of these commands. There's a whole bunch of commands, Git commands, some of which I have not used myself. for the most part because I work alone most of the time, right? And when I'm collaborating with people, it's maybe one or two other people. I've never found myself working on a huge project where you have hundreds of people, right? I mean, the furthest I've gone is just minor contributions to like open source projects, for instance, like DSpace, I think my name is there, like DSpace, but it's really minor changes, right? Where you just send through a pull request and then they'll put it for you. So to answer your question, you don't have to read all the reads about Git or GitHub. We shall show you towards the end, but by tomorrow, we shall show you which things to focus on. All you need to know for you to be able to do what you are doing as a group is how to create a repository, and only one person has to create that repository. How to create a repository, how to configure that repository, how to set it up, how to clone a repository, how to pull changes from a single source of truth, how to push changes to a single source of truth, how to merge changes. That's all. I mean, the rest is pretty much useless at this point in time. Now, I also want to make mention of the fact that once we start our discussion, I hope I've answered your question though, but once we start our discussion of tomorrow, there's a slide here, right? I want to put it out there that most of what I'm talking, huge chunk of what I'm talking about can be found in this freely available book called ProGit. I do encourage you to download this, right? Great book, by the way. Of course, there are people that have come up with easy to synthesize tutorials, right? Which you can easily find online, but choose your poison. I do recommend this, by the way. ProGit is classic, right? So you don't worry so much about the commands for now. There are just a few commands, maybe less than 10 commands that you are going to be using when you're creating this feasibility prototype between now and the 6th of November, or up to the 6th of November. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the guidance. Otherwise, my group members, Hawkins and Matthews, they've guided me. They've said they will help me out. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Hawkins and Matthews already know how to use these tools, but so this is the thing here, right? Are there any other questions before we part ways? I do apologize for the mishap earlier on. This machine, they ripped me off. It's new, right? But the battery only lasts for less than an hour, which is quite sad, really. Are there any other questions or concerns that people might have? Questions?
Yes. Yes, I have that clarity that I want.
Yes.
Able to get me?
Yes, I can get you. We can get you.
I've used GitHub, but I only
breaking,
know how
sorry.
to. Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Oh, I'm saying I've been using it for quite some time, and
Okay.
it alone, like I've created a number of reports.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just me, but Luxon is breaking on my part. Is it just me or it's everybody else?
Yeah, I think even me, I can't really get him.
Yeah, sorry, Luxon, but you're breaking. We can barely hear you. So maybe if you could send your question via email or something. I think you have a terrible connection. Not sure where you're at here. If you could, it would be nice. It sounds like a pretty interesting contribution. So if you could send it via the mailing list so that we can have a conversation about it, that would be great, right? Here's the thing, as you're thinking about more questions that people have, or if your connection stabilizes, let us know. I have a question for you. Do you understand why we're doing all of this? Are you able to plug in our discussion of SOFA, our discussion of software configuration management into our software development lifecycle discussion? Do you know which phase it's associated with? This is the thing, right? Sure, it's in the syllabus, right? We're supposed to talk about this, but you have to look at the bigger picture here. Why are we talking about software configuration management? How is this even useful when it comes to software development, right? Or software engineering? This is what you should be thinking about. And the best way of thinking about what I just mentioned here is to think of it from the perspective of the different phases of the SDLC cycle, or the SDLC, software development life cycle. Yeah? Requirement elicitation, system design, right? Implementation, testing, and then evolution, right? you want to think about whatever it is we're doing here. So it's not like we're just doing these and inventing or just coming up with these things. They're being done because they're linked to the overall discussion of software engineering. Right? So I hope you got into a stage where you're able to piece the different pieces together. These small little things that we're introducing, right? And for whatever reason, I'm talking about this. I've been interacting with some fourth years, and sometimes they'll say, "No, we're doing this course. We don't know why the lecturer is teaching us that topic. It has nothing to do with the topic." And I'm like, "Okay, then what I have to do most of the time is maybe I'll have to contextualize why we're doing this so that people understand." Because it turns out understanding is the most important thing, right? You must understand what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing, right? Are there any questions that people might have before we part ways here? I guess this is like 18. Any concerns or comments that you might have? Okay, if there are no questions, I don't know if you're still there, but I'll see you tomorrow at 16 hours, bright and early, and then we can wrap up our conversation, hopefully, of version control systems. If not, then we'll probably wrap up on Monday. If we don't wrap up tomorrow, it will be Monday, and then we can immediately start our discussion of verification and validation, which is testing. See you, and please prepare for the test, right? 6th of November. Good day. And by the way, I had no idea if I was still connected, but